Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 29 of IGEL Weekly. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. I've got Chris Feeney with me. Chris, coming off a long, 3-day weekend, right, for you?
Yes, it was. I guess started a little bit, Friday afternoon, but yeah, good time away. So
I was just complaining about Mondays, which are, I love Mondays typically. It's the Tuesdays after a long 3-day weekend when you have Monday off that it just runs me over. And
yeah,
I couldn't have come into work early enough today to get done all that has to get done today to catch up for the punishment for taking a Monday off.
yes. I was on standby to run a relay race out in the mountains called the Blue Ridge Relay, and got texted Sunday morning, "Hey, are you still available? We got a guy drop off." And so I checked, made sure it was all right with my wife, and so I'm actually got a shorter week, so I got 2 days to get work done. Thursday we're heading out, and Friday morning I'm running.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like fun.
Well, 6 legs. Everybody's like, "You're stupid." So we'll see. Ask me Saturday afternoon. Hopefully I have a nice cold one in my hands to ease the pain. But
Well, we have Chris Walker from Liquidware. Chris, how's it going?
Going well. Still also recovering from a 3-day weekend. So,
Chris, what's your official title over there at Liquidware?
Senior systems engineer for the Southeast. I'm a pre-sales engineer, also, depending on who you ask, subject matter expert for Stratusphere for North America.
Nice.
I was about to say, I think I saw your title not too long ago, and it was sales engineer. And I'm like, well, he seems to do a lot more than that.
I like to keep it simple, and when you say consultant, so I consider myself more of an engineer. I like the numbers. Give me the numbers.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I'm a fan of the word consultant because it really means something very advisory, and engineer too, but consultant. And I appreciate people that try to humble themselves with their title and don't try to overstate it. Every once in a while you get an email from somebody or see on LinkedIn, they've got a title that's 50 words long.
A mile long. Yeah. Yeah. Now, sometimes I tell people I'm in food services. I'm here to make sure we get lunch.
Yeah.
So,
I had a Unix administrator once that he would tell everybody he was a janitor of the systems janitor, and people would look at him funny, and some had no clue what he's talking about. But what he was really trying to say is he's the guy that's the caretaker of, in that situation, the the Unix platform. And truthfully, there's no difference. I mean, that's what you're doing.
Yep. Clean up the mess.
Well, what we're doing today is we're reviewing a blog, IGEL related, but off the Liquidware site. The title of the blog is Liquidware, IGEL, and ServiceNow team up to enhance endpoint visibility and performance, written by, looks like, Johnny Ma on July 23rd of this year. This ServiceNow, right? I mean, it's easy to come up with a solution. Not easy to come up with it, but easy to want to come up with one for ServiceNow. It seems like everything's trying to plug into it. Do you guys agree on that?
Oh yeah, ServiceNow. When I talk to my customers, I mean, that's probably 80%, especially in the Fortune 500, Fortune 1000. ServiceNow is everywhere.
And why do you guys think that is?
Being one of the first SaaS-based ticketing system, I mean, they really took off. Very similar to the IGEL story. It came from nothing to pretty much owning the world. Wherever you look, there's IGEL. ServiceNow is the same thing. Now there are some players coming in there, hipping at their heels right now. Service Desk, a couple other ones that are SaaS-based. But when you look at a ServiceNow platform and power of that system, it plugs into everything. Everybody wants to be on ServiceNow. Same thing with IGEL. Everybody wants to be on IGEL's compatibility list.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, it's funny. We actually implemented ServiceNow a few months back to replace our old antiquated ticket system. And I got to tell you, when it went live, this is a year-long project, 0 issues. It was unbelievably smooth. And now a few months later, getting into that system and then being able to navigate and figure out what's going on in a ticket. It's just, I've fallen in love with this ServiceNow and have never really used it before. So I'm very excited about today's, because I kind of think it sort of bleeds into just simplifying issues and how to resolve them and that type of thing. So I'm excited about today's topic.
One of the big things, Andy, is, as you know, XenTegra worked very closely with Liquidware to create our Stratusphere connector. And I've got customers that are coming to me with IGEL and just asking me to be a bridge.
Yeah.
So they can get their IGEL endpoint information, sitting in people's houses into the ServiceNow system. So this is, kind of the three of us together, XenTegra being very instrumental in allowing us to instrument Stratusphere data and pull that into ServiceNow has been extremely powerful.
Well, and I do want to talk about that, but I want to go back to Chris's comments about why, and that you mentioned it right out of the gate, the SaaS piece, focusing on it. It's kind of like my company, XenTegra. We just happened to grow up at the right time where the future was now. I think I stole that from somebody just now, maybe Citrix, but the SaaS-based world was how you would do it by default at X day, in their case, like 2005, 2006 timeframe. For me, 2012, you're going to lead with the cloud. You're going to lead with SaaS base. You don't have the heavy lifting of porting a client server on-premises solution to the cloud, which companies like Citrix have been struggling with and accomplishing, but struggling with the last, 5 years or so. It's just really good timing. And then all of a sudden you have this solution that can take product A and product B and be the platform that integrates the two together without reinventing the wheel. And that's got a lot to do with why some of the companies are integrating with them.
Well, I might be a little bit older than you guys, but remember CA Unicenter, IBM Tivoli Tech, those things would take years to implement. Yep. Then when you got done, you had to go back and upgrade it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, those are the never ending projects with ServiceNow. Literally they turn it on, and I mean, it still takes a while. It's a monster beast of a system, but all the upgrades are done in the cloud. The security's done in the cloud. I mean, it's they take care of all that back-end infrastructure for you. So it's I think that's really why it exploded. I remember implementing CA Unicenter, and I mean, it was a 3-year project just to get it up and running.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to be around an organization that was implementing Tivoli for what we're talking about here, and they I don't know. I left at some point, but I'm sure they never got it done.
they never finished the project. Yeah.
Well, Chris, help us understand this first section, which we may have kind of talked through a little bit. But what are you guys setting up in this first section of the article before we jump into the features that are specifically called out?
Yeah, basically, and Chris Feeney, please correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding, IGEL does not have a connector to pull this IGEL information into ServiceNow at this point. Is that correct?
Right. So we don't. We actually have we have an API, a REST API that's built into the UMS framework. And I know that we have an API guide on that, and there's at least one company where they took some of this and built more or less their own way of plugging it into ServiceNow, but it's not productized by any means like what we have here today to talk about.
Yeah. So that's really the goal of this is my customers are asking me, hey, I've got 10,000 IGEL UD pockets floating around the world, and they're connecting to my Citrix environment. When they get into Citrix, I've got that data. I've got monitoring, all my tools are built for that, things like that. Now I need that endpoint, or what we're here at Liquidware calling the first mile. So sitting at my house with my laptop on a pillow, the CPU melting down, I'm 30 meters away from the access point, switching back and forth from 2.4 to 5 gigahertz, and I'm complaining about the Citrix environment. So to be able to pull that data, even with a UD pocket plugged into a laptop at somebody's house, and get that into ServiceNow for the ticketing guys so they can actually solve the problem. Instead of just calling up and they call the help desk and say, I don't know, can you just reboot your machine and call me back tomorrow? Now we can actually get those minute little details. You're running 5 gigahertz, you're dropping back to 2.4, you're too far away from your access point, your CPU is too hot. So we can get all that data from that UD pocket or the IGEL machines as well, because we have a native agent for the IGEL OS. So now with my ServiceNow connector, I can pull that data in and give them a complete end-to-end picture. What's going on in Citrix and what's going on at this guy's house.
Right. Yeah, that's huge. And I think a big part of that is the ability, yes, to have that data when the call comes in, but maybe even have that data before the call comes in.
I was saying the same thing, proactively kind of monitoring, like would it feed it into ServiceNow, like sort of a proactive, like, hey, we got some issues going on here. Or does it happen like if a call comes in let's pull it and see what's
Look at the
there.
architecture. The architecture here, basically, out of the box, with the connector that we built with XenTegra, we're bringing in machine inventory, make, model, serial number, last time it booted, who's the user ID on the machine. So step one, I have that data. And then other customers using what we call the Stratusphere connector kit, they can extend it and do whatever they want to, because it's basically a connector to allow that data from Stratusphere to be pulled into ServiceNow. But the make, model, serial number, the second you install it, that is there. So immediately I can correlate you sitting in Boise, Idaho on a Comcast business network to my Citrix environment based on the IP addresses. So I know what you have, I know what you're running on, then I can press a button and tell ServiceNow, go get me more data. Go get me his Wi-Fi information. Go get me his CPU temperature. So I can, but out of the box, it is purely inventory. Then the ServiceNow teams, because we built it with XenTegra to be very open. I didn't want to expand their CMDB and pollute their CMDB. I didn't want to put a huge load on ServiceNow, but this does allow them to pretty much extend it and do whatever they want to with that system.
So this is Pete for our listeners. Just to make sure I'm clear. Liquidware and XenTegra worked on the Liquidware to ServiceNow connector. Is that correct? Am I hearing that right?
Yep. Well, we have Stratusphere. We have our monitoring diagnostic program called Stratusphere. And our customers wanted that data in ServiceNow because we have a huge amount of data. And the more we talk to customers, the more we find use cases like, applications installed versus used, all kind of data. So diagnostic information. The Stratusphere has been around for over 10 years. About a year and a half ago, Andy, we started doing the ServiceNow connector with the XenTegra development team, and we're able to bring that online. And so now we can pretty much query any data in the system and get them up and running.
And I'll try not to make this a XenTegra commercial, but the platform ServiceNow, the analytics portion provided by Liquidware, the operating system and management solution provided by IGEL, all it takes is that one special partner to see where all those pieces are out there kind of floating around each other and tying it together. That ServiceNow platform is something that's a huge enabler for somebody with some skills like XenTegra's development team to be able to come in and basically take the shoelaces and tie a nice bow on it.
Yeah, that's great. I honestly wasn't aware that you guys had worked together on that, but that now that I'm hearing about it, I was like, that's phenomenal. That's I believe the same thing, right? I mean, you kind of pull back, see the bigger picture here, and what does this come down to? Well, in some cases, potentially proactive, right? If one user is complaining, well, let's check on anybody else to see if we're seeing other similar issues. Because now you've got that integrated platform to kind of pull and see that bigger picture. So. Phenomenal.
So guys, in the blog here, it calls out, 5 or 6 specific features. Let's walk through these one at a time to make sure we don't miss the mark. The first one is verify IGEL client meets SLAs.
So what that's really talking about is at your house, am I getting good connectivity back to Citrix, to Amazon, to Azure, whatever the IGEL device is talking to? I may set up SLAs for latency information that I need to, set off an alarm. But really, that user is relying on my infrastructure, whatever that may be, Citrix, Horizon, or whatever, Amazon, Azure, Google, and they're using that IGEL device to get to it. So they'll set up SLAs to constantly monitor that, throw tickets, things like that. I had a customer actually use IGEL UD Pockets with Stratusphere as part of the interview process. So this is a call center. People would call up and say, hey, I want to work for your company. And they'll send them a UD Pocket, that plug it in their laptop at their house. They would monitor it for 24 hours to make sure they had good connectivity. And at that point, they would say, okay, sorry, we can't hire you because your latency is too high at your house, but you can come into the office. Or your latency is good, therefore we're going to allow you. So it was actually the IGEL Stratusphere and information with the UD Pockets was actually part of the interview process.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yep. Well, think about it. I'm going to hire you to be on the phone all day long on an IGEL at your house, I need to make sure you have the bandwidth to do your job. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like an extreme way of using it. I have a question for you guys. You have all these companies that constantly touts, 2 nines, 3 nines, 4 nines, 5 nines. How do you know? And this is one way to get it into an integrated system where you could run a report and at some point be able to say, yeah, you promised us 5 nines, but whether we're talking IGEL or any other system here, here's what our records show. And because of the power of SaaS and the integration of that platform with other things like Stratusphere, now all of a sudden you can truly try to hold people accountable for what their marketing team said.
Yeah, one of the things in Stratusphere, we actually monitor your foreground application. So I'm a call center guy. I'm connected to your Citrix system. I start up a web browser, your call center applications, but then I go start watching a YouTube video all day long. Well, guess what? I'm actually monitoring your foreground app too. So I know what you're doing. I know what you're looking at.
So this is interesting, right? Because we just another blog that's out there, perhaps another topic for another day, but Citrix just released or officially released the browser content redirection for Citrix Workspace app, right? And so I've had some conversations with customers where they want to, offload that processing down to the IGEL endpoint, bring up Firefox or Chromium or whatever. And so it's, first iterations of that with some customers as we're looking at use cases. One of those was telehealth, right? Click on a link and instead of running it on the back end, then bring up a browser on the front end. But having something like this to be able to see, is that crushing the endpoint or is it, completely fine? Telehealth, obviously very common use case in today's world, a very, very prominent focus for a lot of health systems, must have kind of thing. So be interested to see what we, for those that are using Liquidware and potentially ServiceNow, what results they begin to see with that particular feature.
They actually see the processing on the endpoint as well. I did a call with a customer, I think it's middle of last week, and he's like, we have the Teams offload working and it's doing all this. And it's like, well, not according to this. Your Citrix is transferring, communication channel is wide open, loaded, and your endpoint is not. So I was actually able to see that his Teams offload was not functioning properly.
And we've had similar situations here where we've enabled it, but because of whatever things that didn't line up, it wasn't actually happening. But the end user was told it was enabled, therefore they assumed it worked. I think it's kind of goes back to the kind of the marketing message in technology these days. Trust but verify.
Trust but verify. Yep.
Good old Ronald Reagan.
Yep.
What's funny about, just a quick side note, right? So I heard that years ago and I was like, what is that? What's the story behind that? Well, it was, if you looked at some of the contracts or some of the treaties, whatever, with the Russians, the whole trust but verify was in there, or maybe it was the back end mantra, but what it really came down to was spy satellites checking on the fact that the Russians actually doing what they said they would do.
Right.
So anyways.
Well, and that's true whether it's your business associates, whether it's your clients, whether it's your end users, or whether it's your kids, right? You're not doing them a service if you just tell them stuff and assume they do it. You need to.
My customer, I get on the phone with my customers all the time, and I ask them some very basic questions. And they're like, do you think I'm an idiot? No, I don't think I'm asking you just to verify. Because a lot of times when I'm walking through my diagnostics and we go, can you drop to a command prompt? Can you type in ipconfig/all? Oh man, it's set to the wrong time server. Something that simple. And I'm just asking you to verify it because they look at it all day long, right? I'm coming in with a fresh set of eyes, and sometimes it's something really simple like a DNS entry is wrong or time servers are bad. So they think I'm asking them dumb questions, but I'm just verifying the data.
Hey, look, I worked with a junior administrator, super smart guy, a couple months ago, and I said, hey, jump out to a command prompt, and he goes, what's that? Like, oh my God.
What's that? Yeah.
All right. So the next one called out here is correlating IGEL client to remote system. Chris, what's that mean?
Yep. This is interesting because when you look at the actual user that logs into an IGEL OS, it's user. So 10,000 machines show up in Stratusphere and the user ID is user. Okay. Because the user actually never logs into that device. they log into the UMS. Then the UMS gives them what their desktop should look like and stuff like that. They never actually log into the IGEL OS.
Now, Chris, that's assuming that IGEL is kind of configured as kind of a zero client type of scenario, and they don't actually authenticate. Okay, that makes sense. Go ahead.
Yep.
Which is very common.
There's ways you can get around that. But so in most cases, people are running these as zero clients, maximum security, things like that. I want to send you a little box, and then I control it all from the UMS. That's what most of my customers are doing. This allows me to take, so I'm connecting to a Citrix machine. That Citrix machine, ICA, PC over IP, Blast, RDP, RFX, all give me the remote IP address and remote machine name. So now I can correlate Andy Whiteside on a UD pocket based on your Citrix session. So I tie the two together, your remote IP address and machine name, which is the machine you're sitting in front of, to the Citrix session in my data center.
But Chris, you don't want to ask the end user to tell you what that name is? I mean, I'm joking here, but that's huge in the EUC world of virtual apps, virtual desktops, because you don't even know where it is they're coming from at that point.
What was the program we put on our desktop to tell them, the machine name and all that stuff?
Yeah, we're actually implementing. It'll be in the OS. Conky is one of those from a Linux perspective, probably a Windows version of it too. There was another one that had a similar thing that I'd often see customers deploy, so that right on the desktop, like hostname, IP, whatever. So, but this is great. All kinds of ideas started spinning in my head here about this particular feature.
Yep. Pretty cool. I mean, they don't correlate them now. So whether you're on one machine or 50 machines, I know where you are. And I can put that stuff now into ServiceNow and say, hey, I see you've hit in the past 5 days, you've been on these 5 machines. One of them looks like a laptop in the office. So I can actually see their history and click on them and see the performance of that right here. So I'm calling you today on Tuesday saying I had a problem last Thursday. Oh yeah, I had my UD pocket, but I was at a Starbucks coffee shop. Yeah, I can see it. Your latency was 800 milliseconds. Don't go back to that coffee shop.
Well, and that tackles the next one. Well, first of all, let me just say, because you guys just said that, people in our industry really need to know the difference between bandwidth and latency. Latency is our real enemy. Bandwidth needs to be there. That's gotten better and better through the years. Still situations where it might be bad, but latency, that's the killer. So I think this third bullet kind of goes back to the first comment we were talking about SLAs, and that is measuring the latency between the IGEL client and whatever the remote system is, including, SaaS-based browser apps, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can track the IGEL OS and anything running on that OS, and even do a trace route from that machine. So for hospitals, I've got IGEL deployed, throughout 30 hospitals in the state of Georgia, and because they've got all these branches, and I need to do a trace route from this machine in Macon, Georgia, back to my data center in Alpharetta, Georgia, and show the IT staff, and my latency is fine from 8 to 10, but from 10 to 2, it goes to 80 milliseconds. And oh, by the way, here's the hop that does it right from that user's endpoint.
Oh,
yeah. I was just thinking about this. So we've been kicking around, the framework for an IGEL MSP kind of thing. One of the things that became partial was having a tool like this. You need to have analytics to be able to see what's going on if you're going to be managing a portion of that infrastructure, IGEL specifically, but that's the kind of stuff we hear about all the time, but not having intel, or something like, just like we said, they were at Starbucks last week, they're at the beach, the hotel or remote, starting to travel again, that kind of thing. Was it the hotel conference Wi-Fi, whatever?
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Well, and one we hadn't really pointed out here, this conversation is focused around Stratusphere and ServiceNow and IGEL, but really it's a vegetable soup, if you will, and IGEL is just one of the vegetables in the soup. All these same things apply for whatever the other vegetables are.
Mm-hmm.
All right, next bullet here.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Verify IGEL client performance before and after firmware OS upgrades. In other words, what we're talking about is change control and metrics around before and after change control. Not nearly enough companies do that.
Yeah. I mean, IGEL, the vendor, sends me a new version. I trust you 100%. Press the upgrade button. This can actually tell. I mean, that's the same thing for me, but I'm in the software business too. But I tell my customers, look, we don't have bugs. but we do have undocumented features. So,
Undocumented features created by flawed human beings. What?
Exactly. You know, at the end of the day,
Automation. Keep going.
automation. Yep. So this allows me to track. Okay, I got 10,000 machines. I rolled out this new version of the IGEL OS to 1,000 machines. I can compare and contrast them, and even see. Okay, the IGEL OS running on this version of an HP ZBook is having a problem. Whereas these others are not. So I can actually, I know the make, model, and serial number that IGEL OS is running on, and I can correlate the differences across my entire fleet. So, roll out a small amount of them, look at it, measure it, see what kind of impact it had on the user. Hey, why is my latency all of a sudden go up on these particular ZBooks? Maybe it's a driver problem in that machine. Trust and verify again.
Yeah. All right, next bullet, monitoring local network performance, determine Wi-Fi speeds, protocols. Had a situation this morning, brand new user walked in, sat down at one of our hoteling kiosk scenarios, plugged his device in and nothing works. And finally I look around and realize that somebody has unplugged the network cable. I mean, that's one example of many, but we're only, where was I? Oh, I was at a mobile dental clinic last week and they're using Citrix from the parking lot. Everybody assumes it should be fine, but guess what? Our connectivity is on the Verizon network, and it just so happens it's out in the middle of the country, and the performance of Citrix is horrible. It's not Citrix at all. It's just the network connectivity is so bad. We are, as much as we've gotten to the point where in many cases we assume the network is good. Again, trust but verify.
Yep. So this goes into, I had a large customer bank in the Northeast, actually Northwest. And they were getting ready to spend a couple $1 million on a new VPN solution. That's not an IGEL story, but their CTO and a lot of the executives and a lot of the people who they had sent home were having problems getting onto the VPN. So we loaded agents, because I was in the virtual environment. We loaded agents on some of their physical machines, including the CTO, and started monitoring. Sure enough, he was switching between 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. So that vendor that is very mad because they just lost a $2 million sale because I said, hey, get a little bit closer to that access point and let's turn off 5 gigahertz and see if your VPN problem goes away. Yeah. And sure enough, it did.
We had a scenario a couple of years ago where we were working with a law firm and working with the lawyers specifically, who, by the way, own the law firm. It's similar situation when you're dealing with doctors and lawyers. They're both really, really intelligent people, obviously. However, the concept of wireless gain and networking isn't something they're necessarily experts at. And so we had a situation where, the attorney had converted his back porch into an office, and he had, Citrix, horrible Citrix experience. Then we figured out what it was, right? He just happened to have his access point on the other side of the house, and, fairly large house at that. And here we go. We had lots of Citrix issues, using air quotes.
Yeah, I mean, remember in the past, we would do mesh networks in large buildings. Well, now people are doing that at their house.
Yeah.
So tracking their BSID, which is the MAC address I'm actually on. So whether you're in a hospital, with one SSID and multiple access points, or even because this CTO, he had a large house, he had 4 access points. And I could watch him move from access point to access point and bounce back and forth and change frequencies. And I gave him the data, and he basically said, "Oh, crap."
Yeah.
And he canceled that $2 million PO.
And, I think here's the thing. I want to talk about that just for a second, not the part of this, but as a vendor, right? The willingness to know that, hey, I may be able to solve your problem, but what if my solution actually isn't the right solution? Mm-hmm. That it can be a friction, right? And I think, having the courage to lay it out there and say, you know what, it may not be the right choice. IGEL may not be the right choice in some cases because of whatever, but just knowing, people are like, oh, you're in sales, whatever. Like, no, I mean, at the end of the day, it's about serving the customer and giving them the right information, but not knowing that, having a tool like this actually give you that data and help them make a wise choice. I mean, I might get some, pushback on that, but I will tell you at the end of the day, I've never had an issue where you take care of the customer and they're like, thank you, we're going to actually go this direction. That's fine, but I'll step
That's a
off my
great,
soapbox now, but
well, great example here is where now you have the data not only to help the customer make the right decision, but help the vendor you're working with understand that maybe their answer wasn't the right answer, even though they've been trained to say that their answer is the answer for everything.
right, exactly. So
we have our new guy started. I think I may have referenced that earlier. And then I sat down with him a few minutes ago. It was like last week you sold a product every quarter. Now you sell a partnership with a customer for life. Big difference.
mm-hmm. That's a great point.
All right. So the next thing in the blog is a picture that kind of shows the architecture here, which has Stratusphere kind of sitting in the middle, talking to the platform ServiceNow, and then the help desk accessing ServiceNow from any and everywhere. I only bring that up because the picture really is worth 1,000 words, and it really helps here. But the next section of the blog is integrating it all with ServiceNow. So, Chris Walker, you want to kind of help us see or better understand how the power of ServiceNow being a SaaS app and all the predefined dashboards and things kind of makes this all a usable, keyword usable reality.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, whether you're the CTO or CFO, the executives living at the top, they don't care if you're running Citrix or Horizon or IGEL. All they care about is, can my people get their business done?
Or all the above at the same time.
Yeah, right. So they don't care if you're running a Chevy or a Ford or whatever. You're here to make money. So those people that they hired to do their job, when they call the help desk, they want the help desk to be able to resolve that issue very quickly, not just tell them, hey, can you reboot? I need to be able to see that you haven't rebooted your machine in 6 months. I need to know that your Wi-Fi statistics are good at your house. Or is it Citrix? The Citrix team is telling me that it's not. So right there in that ticket, I need that ticketing guy to be able to actual higher resolution, not just a closed ticket. I actually resolved it, and flip it upside down and see how many other people are having the same problem.
And Chris, I'll add one of the pieces that maybe that guy who takes the call solves the problem and doesn't get layer 2 and 3 and 4 involved, because then your problem just became exponentially more expensive and time consuming.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, the Stratusphere has a massive amount of data, which is something, customers complain, hey, this is a freaking eye chart. Okay, let's bring it into ServiceNow where your ticketing guys are already there and put it in a format that they already understand and build the interface for them. So they don't have to get into my massively. Now, your level 4 or 5 guys, when it gets passed off, they're going to be in Stratusphere. They're going to be digging through the numbers. But if I can get my ticketing people to be able to resolve an issue and then, put a KB article out there or something like that to help other people, that's gold. That's gold.
So I want to comment on this second bullet here. And you touched on it briefly, the resolution, right? So I was on a call last week with a partner, and this guy, one of the guys, he was very used to working with high-end resolution stuff, doctors, that needed to be able to see. And he noticed after he switched to machine running IGEL that it seemed to be less than what Windows, and he started looking at the settings and noticed that our default for resolution, or actually was the brightness setting, was 80%. And he said, well, let me just bump this up to 100%, when it's plugged in. He said that little change from the default to just pushing it up 20%, all of a sudden, after he made that connection back into Citrix, he said the brightness, the resolution was just incredibly, and he looked at it from another machine running Windows, and he said it was just crystal clear. It was unbelievable. And little things like that, like I'd never even thought about bumping that up a little bit more, but just tiny little tweaks, makes all the difference in this particular case. So,
yeah. I just put into the chat, we actually have a IGEL compatibility report, and it's mainly around machines running high audio, high video requirements. This is on my community site too. But we take Stratusphere data and determine, is that machine a good fit to run the IGEL OS? Does it have a good video card? Does it have a good audio card? Can it do the ICA offload? Because you can't, IGEL OS is great, but if they give you a piece of crap machine, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, let me come back to the report because I do want to highlight that in a second. But these 4 that you have listed here, these are pre-configured or pre-established dashboards that come within ServiceNow, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that your developers and I built into the product. So literally, they just plug in the ServiceNow. And I say plug in. When you're talking to ServiceNow teams, those guys have a 6-month or 1-year plan already. So a lot of times the VDI team or the help desk, the service desk team will buy Stratusphere, buy the ServiceNow plugin. They go to the ServiceNow team, the guys that do all the programming, and say, okay, well, yeah, I can talk to you in February, but we have a lot of what we built in, a lot of examples, so that they can take our work and pop it up pretty quick. But at the end of the day, that ServiceNow team already has a 6 or 12 month roadmap that they're working against.
So a couple of things there. One, integrations typically will take a while because there's a lot of things that want to integrate. There's a decent amount of work that does go into this, and plugins like what we created here will fast track that. In addition to that, one of the things I like to highlight about ServiceNow is your company, wherever you work, spent a ton of money on it. You need to find every way possible to aggregate into it so that your company gets the value out of what they have spent and what they will continue to spend on ServiceNow.
Yeah. Remember, it's a subscription too, right? They pay that price every year. And the number of connectors, I've got a presentation that I do on this too, where I've got ServiceNow connected to all these different endpoints. I'm pulling data from VMware, from SCCM. Stratusphere can eliminate those or maybe mitigate them. So I've got fewer connections and a smaller ServiceNow instance with more accurate data, and therefore a lower price or lower cost for ServiceNow.
We recently had a fairly large electrical co-op came to us and said that the ServiceNow guy said that ServiceNow was too expensive for him. And I'm like, well, I don't think he understands the power of some of the simplifications that can go along with it and right sizing it. ServiceNow itself isn't overly expensive. It's not cheap, but it's not overly expensive. You got to find ways to make cost justify the use of it, as well as simplify some of the integrations in order to make it cost effective. Yeah.
If you buy all the tools from ServiceNow, their discovery module, their software, you can easily be at $1 million real quick per year. Easy.
All right. So first one says custom dashboard. Second one is machine management display to display metrics such as boot time, monitor resolution, age, make, model, serial. The third one is user display dashboard. And the fourth one is user detail dashboard. Those are the four that, because of the plugin that was created, users get right out of the gate if they're using ServiceNow and Stratusphere, right?
Yeah. It's pretty much unlimited. Any data, you want to know the last time the BIOS was updated on every HP ZBook in the entire infrastructure. That's in Stratusphere. And by the way, it's part of the default import too.
Right.
So anything, CPU temperature, the IGEL OS version that I'm running across the field for this particular user, everything's there.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned BIOS, and not often do you need to upgrade those, but you do need them up to date. And if not, it will come back and bite you in a big way someday down the road. And it was the least of what you expected to be your problem.
Well, in 2020, the Lenovo's actually put out a BIOS version, and the heat protection, well, maybe I shouldn't have said the company name, but the heat protection in the BIOS was disabled. They were burning down. They were catching on fire because people were putting them, people were putting them on, sent all these people home with these brand new machines. They put them on a pillow, and the heat protection mode is not turned on. That CPU will overheat and in some cases catches on fire.
My 12-year-old last night, I walked into his room bedtime. He was actually watching a video on his MacBook Pro that I gave him. He's got the nicest computer in the house. It's things like 5 years old, but it's still awesome. Anyway, he's got it on his quilt on his bed, and I could hear the fan just screaming, trying to keep up. Yep. And that was my moment to explain to him, hey, airflow matters. You can't just shove this thing on top of a quilt and expect it not to burn up.
Yep. A lot of people are doing that, and that's when we added in CPU temperature into Stratusphere last year.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Is also coming.
Well, guys, the last part of the blog shows one of the dashboard, and also there's a link to how to reach out for a demo between this group of folks here, and happy to do that. Have we left any? Oh, Chris, you mentioned dashboards, and we were talking about dashboards, and you mentioned the reports. Dashboards are just a nice way to take reports and put them into a graphical, user-friendly thing. Reports are a whole nother set of data that's basically limitless, right?
Yeah, limitless. Dashboards are generally designed, like you see on the bottom, to give me a visual representation. I know anything that's red on that screen I need to watch out for. Same thing here on this IGEL compatibility. If it's red, something's wrong. This is telling me really quickly how many machines in my environment can run the IGEL OS, multimedia capable, because I'm a hospital. I need to be able to look at broken bones. It's very important that the processor and the video card in that machine is supported by IGEL. So we're doing a lot of compatibility checking. This is a Power BI report that any of our Stratusphere customers can download. So they have Stratusphere running on their physical machines in their house, and they would flip them to a UD Pocket, just download this little Power BI report, point it at Stratusphere and hit go. It's going to give you a list of all the machines that are, recommended, which ones can run Citrix, things like that.
Yeah, it's a nice report. And I actually did a blog on this, or done a blog, but a podcast sort of webinar with Thomas going through that. And we had additional use cases now that we can talk about, like the Wi-Fi one where you're away, how far away are you from that? But this is a good pre-sales report where if you aren't sure, you got a number of devices and you want to say, all right, can they all run IGEL? Okay, so 24 machines could run IGEL. You can install it. But how much of those will actually meet the use cases that I have? The Teams optimization, offloading, or Zoom, or whatever it might be, things like that. So this would be a great way to kind of assess that before you pull a trigger or send somebody home in the pocket or something.
So look, we're all three consultants, engineers, and we play along well with the marketing guys and the sales guys, but at some point, you got to come to the truth of whether it works on every device. And IGEL is a great example where, for the most part, it does work on every device. But what check boxes are we missing along the way? We're kind of battling marketing a little bit from time to time, and this is a great example of ways we can combat that with data.
Yep, architecture versus architecture.
Yeah,
I didn't say it, you did, but yes, I agree.
Well, guys, I think we're right out of time here, but I appreciate you jumping on, and we'll probably do this again, talk more ServiceNow, talk more IGEL at a later date. Chris, maybe I'll have you come on and talk more things around what you guys are doing with other products in our space around ServiceNow and IGEL is just one of many that you're going to be able to bring into the mix and get into that platform, and again, help you get the value out of what you're spending on that side of the fence. Yep.
Thank you for the time. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, Chris, anything else before we let you go? Chris Walker?
I'm good. Just got to go back to all the emails I've missed now over the weekend. So
no, I don't even want to think about it. I've literally given up. I really have. I am going to put an out of office that says, if I don't respond timely enough, call me, because I can't.
I know a guy who used to basically, when he came back from vacation, he would delete all of his previous emails.
Yep.
His rule was basically, if it was important, they'll email me again.
Right. Chris Feeney, anything else you want to bring up?
No, we've got some exciting things coming out here soon. We'll be able to talk about them, new versions of things. So, but I think nothing else at this point. Just don't get lost in your email. Keep your head up.
Well, we should just briefly mention the IGEL Disrupts coming here in the U.S. and Europe. Give me the U.S. states or U.S. cities.
Charlotte.
Actually, give me a second here. I think I've got them here.
Charlotte, October. Isn't Charlotte in October? I'll be there.
Yep.
Charlotte's
First day is Charlotte, October 12th. And then the 13th of October, Chicago, 14th at Dallas. And then the following week, the 20th is going to be New York City. And the last one is in Los Angeles on the 21st.
Did you guys ever add Toronto to that North American list?
Do not. This is the one as of last week. And I think given the current situation in Canada, I don't know if we're crossing the border at this time. So,
yeah. Okay. And then there's a long list of European places as well.
Yeah, there are. I don't have that in front of me at the moment.
No worries. Well, guys, I appreciate you jumping on, and we'll do it again at a later date.
Thanks,
awesome.
Thanks, Ken.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
All right.
Thanks, Andy.
Bye-bye.